Hello, episode number 6. We are episode number 6. This is it. This is awesome. I'd like to welcome you guys to the Mr. Oculio podcast again, episode number 6. This one is going to be on driving tours and Civil War sites. So a lot of the places that we like to go to and visit obviously require a car. You have to drive around these places. And most of the tours actually make up, what we have from the Park Service. Most of these tours are done by driving, and they have accompanying tours that go with that. So I think this is imperative to talk about and kind of understand how the driving aspect of Civil War battlefields has really played into effect of how people are coming out and learning and what the experiences they're getting from this. Is it different than walking? Is it different than seeing the movie at your visitor center? Is it different from even just being able to spend time walking through some of the trails on the battlefield? We'll talk about that when we get in, but definitely wanted to start with that here. All right, and we have John Roos with us today. Let's go ahead and get John in here. John Roos, are you with me, sir?
I am.
Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hello there.
So I just kind of started and let him know that we are talking today about the driving tours and what those are for us and what those are for the general public that come out to these battlefields, and just kind of the experiences you can get from that versus walking the battlefield and spending time through some of these trails.
Yeah, it's there's a variety of ways to see the fields. I mean, for your basic general visitor, it usually the simplest option will be what they go with, but sometimes it could be very confusing trying to figure out a battlefield on your own.
For sure. And that's, I think, some of the guides that you're able to get from visitor centers, even if it's just one of the standard maps of the area, tend to really help a visitor kind of navigate these fields. Because, you go to a place like the Battle of the Wilderness or the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, where your visitor center is kind of just narrowed down to nothing but a shelter half, or, an exhibit shelter, that we would call it at the Park Service. You call it that because it's exactly what it is. It's not a visitor center. You don't have always a ranger or a historian out there to give you this information. You're basically grabbing a map from yourself, if there's even a map in one of the brochure holders there. So going out to a place like that and not having the proper knowledge or even just a map could create quite a difficulty for the average visitor trying to get out and see one of these battlefields.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to say that one thing I was definitely grateful of when I came to intern here in Fredericksburg back in 16, and I'm sure you did this too,
Right.
was and you could either buy or rent these
The
from the
audio
visitor
tapes.
center. Yeah, the audio that you put in the car. That alone brought me to so many more spots than what you get on the basic National Park Service map. They were incredible because it takes you down to like Slaughter Pen and Pelham's Corner, and those are marked on the Park Service maps here, but you really can't find them if you're just following Park Service roads. It just takes you down Lee Drive. But so those audio tours are invaluable in my opinion.
I agree. I think something similar to that effect is the app that the American Battlefield Trust has that are on, the specific battlefields. Like, you can get a Chancellorsville battle app, and they have some of the audio just that are pulled from quotes of soldiers. And you can play those at some of the stops. So, I mean, it's similar to the audio tape. Obviously, nowhere near in depth as getting one from, the Park Service and taking one of those tours. But even down to something that's very generally accessible and, might I add, free of charge. These things are really invaluable as well, in my opinion. And that's something, especially walking a place like Slaughter Pen. Like, when you drive out there and then you have that's not a drivable battlefield. You have to park and you have to get your butt out and walk. And when you're out there, there is great interpretive markers that hit that battlefield. I mean, there's wonderful information for you out there. But if you want to go a step above that and you want to be able to, kind of feel what it was like to be there in a sense, I think those apps and those audio tours are perfect for that.
I never used one of those. I think I tried to use it once, but I had really garbage service. So
That's why you
the
got to
app just wasn't
download
working.
before you go, man. They have they have a feature on there where you can download all the videos and the audio that come along with each tour, and have that downloaded to your phone. So by the time you get out to the battlefield, it's already saved on there, and you don't have to wait for it to download or anything. It just plays on demand. So that's a
And,
nice
and
feature too.
yeah, and that's why I am not techie. I would not ever figure that out. I would just throw my phone through the window and be done with
I understand. Again, this is why we chose the path of history to study, correct?
it. Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Definitely.
Well, one thing I think you and I could really dive into that was, I think, a great experience, and I mean, I know myself, I had a blast with this. My dogs are going crazy today for some reason. It's funny. You get to hear a hound dog, and the other one is a Morkie, which is a Maltese and a Yorkshire Terrier. So that's what the barking you're hearing in the background. So I do apologize for that, but they're dogs. What are they gonna do?
Exactly.
Can't yell at them for talking. I mean, that's what they do. But we went on this tour, and now this tour in particular comes from the appendice of a book that's known, or it's not even the appendice in general, it's actually the entire book. But the Emerging Civil War series that are published out of Savage Beauty Publishing are one of the most incredible series on the Civil War to date. And I mean that literally. Like, these things have been instrumental in how I've learned as a historian. Some of these battles, they're my start to everything. If I know there's a ECW book on a battle, I have that book more than likely sitting right in front of me on my shelf. Because if I want to end up A, visiting the site, or just even B, reading about the site and learning more about the site, so that potentially later on when I do have a chance to visit that said site, I'm well read up. These ECW books are what I turn to. And they're very convenient to keep with you on a shelf, on the battlefield, in your car, in your bag, whatever it may be. It's just all around great idea and awesome series. But with that, the specific tour that I think me and John want to touch on a little bit today is from No Turning Back, a guide to the 1864 Overland Campaign from the Wilderness to Cold Harbor, May 4th through June 13th, 1864. This comes at you from 3 authors, actually: Robert B. Dunkerley, Donald C. Fonz, and David R. Ruth. All of these guys pitched in together to write this book, and like I said, this has been invaluable. Now, John is the one that turned me onto the book and is the one that suggested that we take this tour to see how it goes. Now, I think he has previously done it before I have, so that gave him a little bit of decent back knowledge on where to go and kind of how to navigate this thing. But John, just what drew you into this in particular, this tour, and what made you want to actually go and drive to these spots that maybe not every visitor knows about or has access to?
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, is visitors not having access to stuff. Because one of the things that is very important to know about this book and a couple of the other books that I'll mention a little later on is, if you're driving around, whether you're in Pennsylvania, Maryland, but especially in Virginia, you see these Civil War trail signs. And most of the time, maybe you'll pop up to it and you'll pull in and maybe you'll read the marker, but not really know its context. And a lot of this does follow the Civil War trail markers, but in a storyline fashion. Now, this book by itself starts up at the Wilderness, and it starts with that battlefield. So you are going to be touring the battlefield of the Wilderness and Spotsylvania Courthouse, and possibly hit up a lot of the spots that if you are following it in order. But realize that this is a driving tour that is going to take you from the Wilderness to Cold Harbor. And for those of you that don't know, you are right outside of Richmond at that point. So you got to figure these are in-depth, long driving tours that will require fuel and time. It's not something you can do real quick. You could maybe pull it off in a day, but you also have to figure you're going to get out at a lot of these stops. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that as you're going along, and what I learned, I didn't realize it was a driving tour book at first, but you are seeing these unknown spots. Like, you were seeing the Motley House, which is down the street from Fairfield Plantation, where most of the time Fairfield Plantation is about the death of Stonewall Jackson, but it also was the Army of the Potomac's headquarters
Mm-hmm.
after Spotsylvania Courthouse as they're moving south. And you could be driving up and down that road, past the Jackson death site, go past the Motley House, never think twice about it, but yet there's Ulysses S. Grant in 1864 smoking a cigar on the porch, getting yelled at by the owner.
I was gonna say, I was like, who knows that they're driving past that house and there's a guy coming out cussing at Grant, scolding him about almost burning the house down.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You are going to be seeing so many unknown spots. You're going to go through the middle of nowhere. But yet, the other thing that's funny is that you're going through the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden, there's a Civil War Trails marker.
Right.
So you pull in, and then you're reading that marker. But also, it's not just a driving tour from point A to point B, C, D, all the way through Z. This book and the other ones I'll mention later also gives you detail of where you're at. It's a more in-depth look at what's already on the marker at the Civil War Trails pull-off. And not only that, but sometimes there is no Civil War Trails marker. So sometimes it is just what's in the ECW book. So you're not just getting start here, stop here, okay, continue here, boom, boom. It is actually going to give you a synopsis of the troop movements, what was going on at that moment. And Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's like I said, those are good things too because they come with the maps, they come with information in the books itself, obviously about where you're stopping at and what's going on, where you're stopping at. But you said Civil War Trails, and that was something I like to talk about quite a bit actually, because a lot of the sites that I like to go to the most are not the ones that you typically would visit when you think of a battlefield. When a lot of people come to visit battlefields, they think of visitor centers, bathrooms, they think of parking spaces, they think of not having to trek through brush and briar. That's what I think of doing when I hear
Oh
going to
yeah.
a battlefield, you know? And I think that's rightfully so for many of you that may listen to this. You know, a lot of us like to go and just hit those off the beaten path battlefield sites. And the Civil War Trails really specialize in that, I think. Or, you know, sites that haven't been majorly preserved. They get these really awesome sites along the sides of the road. And you'll see the signs all over Virginia. And, I mean, it just, anytime you see them, you just kind of have to pull off. Whether, you know, you have a time or not, that's like kind of an unwritten rule for me. Oh, there's a
No,
Civil War Trail
definitely.
sign. Oh, okay. I'm just pulling off.
Oh, definitely. And
Yeah.
they do these books also. I did forget to mention this that after each stop they come with directions, but they
Mm-hmm.
also come with GPS coordinates. Now, I will say, and it was mainly in a book dealing with Gettysburg. I did find a couple like, these directions should be fixed. But you know what? Overall, it's in the directions are very good. Of course, you also have to always remember that when you're looking at these books, always check publication date because if it's published in 2015 and a brand new mini mark goes up in 2019, well, guess what? The road may have shifted, turns may have changed. That's something that you always got to kind of keep in account. That's why having the GPS coordinates in there, also what they put into this book for each stop, is major to put that into your GPS.
And that's, you know, that's very, very convenient for everybody that needs to be able to, you know, use that GPS feature that we all are so lucky to have now, honestly, because I can even think I wasn't driving at the times of everybody just relying on the unigrids. But I kind of wish I was because I feel like there's an art and there's just a experience to that does kind of get taken away with the GPS. Like getting lost on a battlefield, that's we don't get that too much anymore. I mean, see it sometimes, yes, but you know, I mean, I'm not saying that's a fun situation to get into. But you know, it's those little things about how going to a battlefield was, say, 40 years ago compared to going to it now.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that changes, and that there's also an evolution to the driving aspect of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
You
like
know,
a perfect example of that too is like if you're up on Little Round Top in Gettysburg, it used to be you had to hike and try to find that was that company B marker
right?
that's like behind the 20th main position. Now you can easily just Google Earth it and find it, coordinates, boom, walk right to it.
Drive right up to it. So
But
yeah, you know,
yeah,
park and
first
go.
time I ever did it, I had to hike through the woods and try to be like, where the heck is this thing?
But like I said, there's just something about that experience of having to really go out of your way to find it,
Yeah, definitely,
or you know,
absolutely.
something that's not marked, something that's not GPS. That's fun, and we did that with the trenches to Spotsylvania here a few weeks ago when we went off the track, just try to find out where this. I mean, and it's marked, but there was really I never found GPS coordinates to it, so there was nothing to like point me. Oh, these trenches and these works are exactly right here. And works
Right.
trying to decipher works themselves can be tricky. I mean,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm sure you know, like it really can. But getting out and finally, you know, having the success of, you know, getting stuck in the thorns or, you know, falling into a creek sometimes. I didn't do that this time, unfortunately. No creek falls They're fun. They are. But I'm 25 going on 26. I'm starting to feel what a creek fall really does to the knees. I'm like, dang, I'm only 26 and my knees are already kind of hurting.
I'm 40. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
But that again, that experience of being
Oh yeah. I
through the
love
woods,
getting lost on the battlefield.
right?
Getting lost on the battlefields are the best. They really
Yeah,
are.
it sounds crazy, but he's got a point. It sounds fun. It's fun. But
uh,
getting back to kind of the driving aspects, especially when we did the no turning back. One of the things we did when we first started, and this, I've lived here. God, I've been here since June of 2000, so 21 years now. Being here 21 years, I've never actually stopped at some of the places that are literally less than 5 miles from my front door. And
yeah.
that's kind of sad to say that. And then going to them for the first time, using this book and just accompanying John on the time we went and did the tour, it was like a whole new Spotsylvania County for me, literally.
Oh,
Well, we stopped
absolutely.
at that
Yeah.
church. That was the first place that we stopped at.
Yeah. The Zion Church in
Zion Church.
downtown
That's right.
Spotsylvania, where AP Hill got chewed out by Robert E. Lee.
That he did.
Oh yeah, that was dealing with the Myers Hill expedition or the Myers Hill incident.
And we started the tour actually not in order because there is a whole section of tours for wilderness and Spotsylvania. But seeing as how John and I have both led tours on both battlefields, it's not something that we felt we needed to. We were on stop 17 when we started in that book.
Yeah, yeah. I think most of the beginning part with the wilderness, and I think you have the book in front of you, so
I
correct me
do.
if I'm wrong, but I think it's all just the battlefield. Maybe Germanna Ford is on there as maybe stop one. I'm not sure. I know it doesn't go as far out as Brandy Station where the Union Army started, but
Germanna
um,
Ford is the first stop.
okay, yeah. So I mean, I've been there. I'm going to assume you've been down to Germanna
I
Ford.
have.
So it's like, and then you just kind of get into the Battle of the Wilderness. You're doing the basic stops that we've done 1.5 billion times.
Right.
I don't know in between, besides Todd's Tavern, I don't know how much more is in between the Wilderness of Spotsylvania story in that book. Because again, kind of bypass what I know.
Yeah, I'm looking. It doesn't look like much. It looks like Todd's Tavern's that last stop.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I figured. And and it's funny too because here we are, and I want
Or
everybody to think
Jackson's
on this.
Trail West. They have you stopping at Jackson's Trail.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit
And the
different
Brock
to
Road
hear.
Fork.
Okay. And see, and that's an important thing too about this book and the other books that we'll hint on a little bit later is we're talking about, a little bit outside of the battlefields, Germanna Ford, Todd's Tavern, realizes that these armies, this isn't sci-fi. These armies aren't just lifted up and put into their next spot. They're moving. There is stories to these movements. There's stories to what's happening. These books, these driving tours fill in these gaps. It's like we were talking about in our last podcast with MJ about how it's like there's so much more to the story than just the days of the battle, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what a lot of these books do. It takes you to those spots where you see these places like a Milford Station, yeah, where Hancock was up against his last resistance, and it wasn't much of a resistance before getting into the Battle of North Anna. So, it's like seeing these spots is important because it is part of the story.
Absolutely is part of the story. And, that's one thing you look at too. Like when we stopped at the Methodist church, I had no idea even that was the church that was very just symbolic of that battle and that move towards North Anna.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stopped at Myers Hill, which actually isn't in the book. That was fun.
Yeah.
Myers
Yeah,
Hill
I'm,
is
I'm
very
hoping I'm
interesting
hoping they get some trail signs out there soon.
because it is now protected, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I don't know how much of the area. That's a question for Mikowski, I guess.
Right.
I know he was spearheading that with I can't think of his name. Wenzel, I think his
Yeah,
name is Central. Yeah,
Terry.
Terry
Yeah.
Wenzel. I think they were spearheading that, but I don't know exactly what's preserved and what's going to be accessible.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I know that there's some work going on. I know we're kind of getting off track, but there is a look at an area out at the Mine Run field, and it's very close to getting another Central Virginia Battlefield Trust marker out there.
Oh, really?
right near Mine Run along the Orange Turnpike.
Oh, that's cool.
So there is going to be new preservation out there, and that's the whole thing. Is that that's another thing to keep in mind is that you could be on these tours, and maybe something new did get preserved, and it just adds to the story. It may not be in the book. Again, go by publication date, but you never know. You may pop up on something and discover something that you didn't even think you would because it's newly preserved. You never know what you're going to find out there.
That's right. You really don't. There's so many different little, like I said, the Civil War Trail sites. Those are just so all over the place. It's awesome.
Oh,
It really is.
absolutely. And then you could get overwhelmed. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but
Sure.
I followed Last Road North, another emerging Civil War book. I should actually grab it so I can get our
So I
authors.
got it right here. I
If you
think
got it and want to read off the authors, go
I
for it.
do. It's Rob Orison and Dan Welch.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Again, published by Savis Beatty. And when you're doing that, and especially if you follow the Confederate route, now just to kind of give a quick idea of what this is, Last Road North is you choose one tour. Unlike No Turning Back, which is a basic direct tour with stops, you either follow the Confederates from Fredericksburg to Gettysburg, you follow the Federals from Fredericksburg to Gettysburg, or you can follow Jeb Stuart and see what the heck he was up to from Fredericksburg to Gettysburg. But the thing that I'm trying to get at here is that with these Civil War Trail signs, is that when you get out into the Shenandoah Valley and you're following the tour book, there's going to be signs going all over the place. And you got to realize, okay, that is maybe 1864 Valley Campaign with Jubal Early and Phil Sheridan. This sign over here is for Stonewall Jackson's 1862 Valley Campaign. And then this sign here is for the Confederates moving north up
Hmm.
towards Gettysburg. So it's like it can get very overwhelming and very confusing quickly.
And that's, thinking about how overwhelming it can get. Imagine going from, and I'm an Eastern Theater boy. I study a lot of the Eastern Theater of the war. When me and Joe went out to Chickamauga for the first time, and that was overwhelming in itself because I have virtually no knowledge about any of these sites, and I relied heavily on driving tours because it
Right.
could get me kind of oriented, choreographed to everything that was going on, and that alone helped. I mean, I didn't even get to see the whole thing because Chickamauga is a rather large battlefield.
It is the largest.
Yes, it is not small. That was a very large battlefield, and that was
Yep.
awesome to drive. Don't get me wrong; like, that was cool to go see.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
it's yeah,
Yeah, and the ECW, Emerging Civil War again. As those of you that are listening, we're obviously plugging a lot of ECW stuff here, but they have, I believe, bushwhacking on a grand scale. I should have had these out. What the heck is wrong with me? Bushwhacking on a grand
you got that
scale,
next to me.
and they also have right up the road is Chattanooga, Chickamauga, Chattanooga. Actually, kind of go hand in hand. It is
Mm-hmm.
actually the same park. For those of you that have never visited, it is one park. And I believe there are two emerging Civil War books for
There
Chattanooga.
are both
Battle above the
Dave Powell books.
Yeah, yeah, and I think another thing to also know about these ECW books is that if like we're talking about No Turning Back, this driving tour that took Tyler and I through part of the Overland campaign, but there is also specific the Wilderness book with Emerging Civil War, a specific book about just Spotsylvania Courthouse. There's driving tours in those too that you can follow. So it's like there is really a lot of options when you're looking at driving tours and books.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what I liked about so much about No Turning Back is it was an overall overland campaign tour.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was cool.
I wish they went all the way to Petersburg, but I guess they kind of ran out of steam or something.
Yeah, no, I mean Petersburg is a very daunting tour in itself
Yeah, I know.
because then you go into
Macalester.
like Bermuda Hundred.
Yeah, yeah, Bermuda
Bermuda
100.
Hundred's its own campaign. You've got pretty much a year's worth of Petersburg, man. Like it's close to a year. It's not a year, but I mean you're close to it, and there's just so many rear actions and charges and things that just take place in assaults. It's just forays, and you got like the beefsteak raid, the Globe Tavern, and
hmm
Weldon Railroad, the forts, Fort Harrison, Chaffin's Bluff. You've got Drury's Bluff. You've got all these different things that are happening in that area. That just doing one concise tour is, oof, oof.
Oh yeah, Petersburg is a monster in itself.
I dare someone to do it.
To write a driving tour for Petersburg.
No, to do the driving tour of Petersburg, like actually go and try to do all of that in one day, and actually, I mean, I dare somebody.
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt it.
I'm
I
sure it's
doubt
been
it.
done. I'm sure it has, and if it has, I applaud you. But that's just
Oh, I'm
good lord.
sure.
That
I'm
is
sure. Ed Bars, the late Ed Bars, probably did it. Oh man, yeah,
without a water bottle too.
yeah. Knowing him, probably had a heart attack like he did in Gettysburg, and just continued the tour. That
Man's a
man was a
legend.
machine.
Yeah,
That
he
man was
was.
a machine. I think another thing I just kind of want to note, and because really No Turning Back was my introduction to the Emerging Civil War driving tour
Mm.
books, is you really are in the middle of nowhere for a good chunk of it. At least
Mm-hmm.
doing the North Anna portion of it. I have gone past the North Anna and started towards Totopotomy Creek. Um, you are in the middle of nowhere. So when you have those moments when you don't have somebody right on your rear end when you're driving because you're trying to take in some of the sights, just reflect for a moment and realize that you're in the middle of nowhere, possibly the only car on the road, and yet there's 70,000 soldiers coming down this road at one point. It's just wild to just think about where you are, where these tours take you, and what was there at the time.
Mm. That's a good way to put it, man. Like to try to visualize just 70,000 men moving down a lane like that. And mind you,
Mm-hmm.
too, the roads that we're driving on are nowhere near as narrow as they would have been in '64.
Oh, definitely.
Right, so
Definitely.
you got to even now add that to the picture of more of an enclosed road and 70,000 troops marching down that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hell of a picture.
So actually, I got a question for you because
Sure.
you've done this a lot more. I've been to Antietam a total of 3 times, and one
Okay.
of those times it was so blistering, windy, cold that like doing anything intense as far as a tour would be too much. The third time I went there, it was after following another ECW book,
Mm-hmm.
following the armies from Fredericksburg to Antietam. And so by the time you get to Antietam, which is the end, it was no real like touring. Like, what did you follow? Because you have a good understanding of Antietam and have been there often. Like, how did you get Antietam into your repertoire, let's say? What did
Well,
you use?
this is cool that we're going to talk about Antietam, man, because obviously I didn't have any idea on what I was doing when I went. And it's one of those battlefields that has a very good park service tour. But again, let's be real. Was I going to follow that or was I going to follow the one that takes me through the middle of nowhere? I went to that one. Um, this doesn't necessarily take you to the middle of nowhere like that, but it does take you to the middle of nowhere as well. It takes you to some of these places that we have mentioned that are just off the beaten path. And I picked up a guide when I went to the Antietam. The book is called A Field Guide to Antietam, written by Carol Reardon and Tom Vossler. They also wrote a similar guide called A Field Guide to Gettysburg, which is what helped me propel my understanding into Gettysburg. These two alone are probably going to be the two that I recommend out of any book that I read on field guides and being out there driving, what have you. But this was just kind of the intro still, and I don't credit these for my knowledge because then the wealth of knowledge comes from more authors and first source material and just wealth of research that I get to actually take on some of these battles that I really take interest to. Antietam being one of those that I really felt a personal connection to in a number of ways. As I have a ancestor who, and we've talked about him in the Gettysburg episode just a little bit when we were talking to MJ last episode. But I had one that was serving in Parker's Virginia Battery, literally in front of the Dunker Church.
Mm.
So yeah, having, and then the gun position is actually out front of the visitor center, and it's depicting S.D. Lee's battery position, and that's exactly what his position, who he would have been fighting with. So that immediately had me already on a level of, okay, this is a battlefield that I feel a very personal connection to. This is where he was wounded, serving in one of the most intense artillery duels known to mankind. I mean, this was literally dubbed artillery hell, specifically where his position was, dueling with the federal guns over there on the other side of the Antietam than the ones that had been brought over. These
Right.
Union guns had superior range on the guns that the Confederates had over on the opposite side of the cornfield there in front of the church. So obviously the Federals are scoring better hits, and the Union, as we know, crushes through the corn and battles with some Confederates, get beaten back by Texans, then beat the Texans back. It just continues to ebb and flow for a bit. But in the middle of all that chaos is when Ed Duffy, who is the at that time I believe a sergeant of one of the guns, is wounded by a mini ball in the leg and taken to Shepherdstown, now in West Virginia, and he has the ball extracted from his leg without whiskey, mind you. He in his diary he quotes that he was a good Christian Irishman and wouldn't abide by that. So the man took water instead. Like, you're a badass, Grandpa. Thanks for that inspiration. I don't
They're a
drink
different
anymore
breed.
myself, but if I'm being faced with the fact of having to have my wound probed and prodded and pulled out with it's either a surgeon's hand or a literal probe that they would use, and then have a bullet extracted, give me a couple shots of that whiskey, sir. Absolutely, I'm gonna say it now. They're a different breed for a reason, man. Just water, shoot. Okay.
That's something else. That's
Right, but
something
it's
else.
those stories and that feeling that ultimately catapulted me into this love of Antietam that I have, and I mean it
Hmm.
flourished quickly, and I think it's probably my number one favorite battlefield because of that. Even though I live in Fredericksburg and this is my home, this is my life here, but Antietam just has that feel, man, and it being that it's the bloodiest single day, that obviously has draw to it itself, but it has a more of a solemn feeling that I don't. I would think I'd get them on these battlefields with this how bad as they were, but with Antietam again, it's that different feeling. It's being out there and having this sense of wow, this is a very historic day for the United States.
Hmm.
This was a very dark day for the United States, and you can feel it at that battlefield in particular.
Yeah, it's Sarah, my wife. I proposed to her in the middle of Pickett's Charge, and
Oh.
you would think that Gettysburg would hold a special place in her heart, but we got to Antietam, and even though we were only there briefly, she said to me, "I think I like Antietam more than Gettysburg." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
huh, "Okay."
I would
There
love to
is
get you
something
two
very
up there for
special.
a day. If we could just go up there for like a day or two and spend up there on the battlefield. I mean, it's a place I've visited even during COVID because I think Antietam takes some very safe and precautious measures when it comes to social
Hmm.
distancing, and I love that about the field too. Is it's not one that's heavily as frequented as Gettysburg, where you're in close groups of people from location to location. Antietam's pretty
Right.
sporadic. There is a lot of people, yes, but it's so spread out and there's so many spots people just gloss over and don't even stop at, and
Hmm.
I think that doing that does any complete injustice, excuse me, to actually being at Antietam because it's so small in itself that there's no reason to do that, and you're
Oh
missing
yeah,
something completely different than what's happening over here by a mile. I
yeah.
like to
It's
say that
definitely.
it's, because we look at the battle, I like to say it's in three separate phases. You have the very early morning phase, which I'm going to go ahead and encompass three because I'm going to use the Westwoods in the cornfield action and what's going around the whirlpool of the Dunker Church. I like to say that's all just a phase one, if you
Yeah,
will. And then you
I
shift
agree.
over to Sumner moving on the sunken road, which Sumner has a thing for sunken roads, does he not? And he's attacking the sunken road at Bloody Lane, Sunken Lane, and that in itself is a whole another aspect of the battle. Mind you, they say along that road too. This is something that stuck out to me through Carol Reardon is that they could hear this explosion sound, and off to their left is the Westwoods attack. Barksdale and all the Mississippians running into the Westwoods, just completely slamming almost at Hedgecock. Wow, Sedgwick, Hancock and Sedgwick just morphed in my brain, and I said, "Oh man, the Civil War does that to you. Good lord."
Oh, it does. It does.
Sedgwick gets cut off in the Westwoods, pretty much as the tips of the bayonets are gleaming in the sunlight over top there at the sunken lane. And there's some things that Carol Reardon does in her book. She gives you these personal stories and these individual vedettes of things that happen at the locations you're stopping at, whether again it be on the drive or if you're walking some of these sites. Because I think she does really good with mixing the two. That she'll have you walk a good distance at some of these stops, but some of the times you don't leave your vehicle. Or you just leave the vehicle by stepping out to hold the book and orient yourself properly by taking 10 paces. What's that? Okay. But it's cool how she mixes that, and I think that helps to have a visitor engaged more in a battlefield because it serves as a break. You don't have to get out of the car and walk that far. You're not pushed to make this long trek. But if you make the treks that are a little out there, it's definitely rewarding. And I'm not gonna lie to you, man. There is still a part of the battlefield I have not yet been able to fully cover, and this is gonna be the first thing I do when I get to Antietam next time, is to consult this part of the book that I haven't gotten to yet because I got so engrossed in it. I'd sit here and pull out Stephen Sears or I'd pull out Scott Hartwig's book and just sit there for an hour at the spot that I'm touring and study because it's so. That's one of those ones again. It's so visually there and preserved that you can visualize lines like no tomorrow, dude. And it's so beautiful. It just the picture is clear cut in front of you.
Absolutely.
So sorry for the long spiel on Antietam, but I figured that this is what one of these field guides can do.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was what my spiel was for. It wasn't to just ramble on. Of course, it was to just ramble on, but I mean, it was also to really paint a picture of how passionate you can become about something like that, especially if you're the history nut like us. You just, man, this is it. This is one of those fields that I really think I had the connection to, and this book helped me propel that. So thank you, Carol Reardon and Tom Foster. Y'all are awesome. Appreciate this book.
I gotta say, kind of like piggybacking off of that, I think it's an important thing to note, whether it's been these emerging Civil War books, and you mentioned Carol Reardon and Vossler and their field guides. Was Vossler also with the Gettysburg Field Guide too?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I think what's very important to realize is that most people will go to the park, grab the Park Service map, and go about. And you got to realize that the Park Service is going to be limited. It's not that they don't want you to see certain areas. They are going to show you and talk about what is in their area, what they have. A big thing to realize is that not only are you off the beaten path with a lot of these field guides, like these Emerging Civil War books or the field guides that Tyler just talked about, they are not written by just some schlub off the street that kind of studied up on Antietam. These are all historians. These are people that have studied the battle. So you're not just getting some random Joe Blow writing stuff. These are people that have credentials, have respect in the history community, and they are making these fields and a lot of the unknown stories accessible to us.
And I mean, just because these historians that have created such good works, whether it be from the ECW series or whether it be one of these field guides that Reardon and Vossler wrote, you have so many options too of good material to go through that suits you and how you want to learn. You do not have to dive into a Carol Reardon and Tom Vossler, although I recommend it. Not every visitor wants to spend that much time on a battlefield. Maybe the ECW book in that regard, the Antietam book, maybe that's the one you want to read.
Yeah, and just like what we mentioned earlier, of how I mentioned there's that long driving tour from the wilderness to Cold Harbor, which you can do in segments. And then you have the ECW book that I mentioned that is the driving tour from Fredericksburg to Antietam, but you can follow one army or the other. But realize, again, for ECW, there is an Antietam book. So you can just go straight to Antietam and use the Emerging Civil War book as well. So, there's a lot of options with Emerging Civil War. And then, you want to be like, you know what? I want to get more in depth and grab the field guide.
Yeah.
So,
and I can go into days and days and days of conversation about what books to read, and we'll save that for another time because John has brought up a good idea about doing episodes on Civil War literature, and that could just be a whole segment in itself, multiple segments. So we'll get to that when we can finally figure out how to approach it.
That's daunting.
It is. It is very daunting because it would be just it wouldn't just be this is a good book. This book's great. This book's awesome. We're give it some analysis and give it some overview.
Oh, definitely. By battle, person, political moment, civilian stuff.
Yeah.
First person accounts. Everybody loves Company H, or a sideshow, or a seat at the side. What the heck? I'm messing up the darn
sideshow to the big show or something like that.
Yeah, Sideshow of the Big Show.
There you go.
By Sam Watkins. Yeah, I screwed that. Luckily, I had it sitting right there and I can grab it quick. But that's a whole other thing. But I will say,
I actually don't have that.
you know, I don't know, I got it cheap. I don't remember how much I
I'm
got it
sure
for,
I
but I
could
got
get
it
it
for.
cheap. I just haven't crossed the boundary buying it yet. Not that there's any boundary binding me not to buy it. I just haven't.
Exactly. um, just to this is going to be my own personal point when it comes to touring battlefields. Of course, these books and guiding you through all these spots are something, but the Park Service does what they can do. But a lot of times, especially the big parks, mainly Gettysburg, and I do know Antietam has them, and I know Vicksburg has them. Uh, Licensed guides, and
Mm-hmm.
I am one here in the Fredericksburg area with a company called Fredericksburg Tours, and we cover a lot of the major battles, but also a lot of the unknown stories as we've expanded. But battlefield guide, and most people have been to Gettysburg, so we assume they always understand that our process is similar, where we get in your car and take you around and go from there. Of course, with COVID, we do have some. We're open to caravan tours and masks in the car and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, a licensed guide will definitely make things very personal, because not only that, we do things like ancestor tours where we will do our best to put you in the footsteps of your ancestor and stuff like that. So, yeah, getting a licensed guide, you may not get the whole broad, like no turning back book type experience, but you will get a very in depth tour with on a battle
Right.
when you get a guide.
And that's pretty big in itself.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've completed tours and they're like, I never realized that. It happens more at Fredericksburg than anywhere else, because Fredericksburg is stuck in a bubble of the stone wall, Marie's Heights. And one of the first things I always hear is, I didn't realize there was a whole other area of the battlefield. I'm like, yeah, no, most people don't.
Mm-mm. They don't get the opportunity to know that it's the whole other battlefield.
Nope. Thanks, Ken Burns and Gods and Generals.
It's so many other things too. It's all a lot of soldiers' accounts. I mean, most everybody wants to focus on what happened at Burries Heights. It was the saved thing at first. You remember, Fredericksburg did have the luxury of being able to save Marie's Heights and some of the sunken road. So obviously, with that
Yeah.
being within the bounds of the park too, the early visitors are seeing this, so that's going to be an obvious spark of interest for them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm as you can tell, I'm kind of bitter. I always I love the areas of the battlefields that nobody visits, and I always tell my visitors, I'm like, nobody ever comes down here, so take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Ah,
So now that you've asked me about what my favorite driving tour was and what battlefield, if you could pick one that you would say really stuck out to you and would be your favorite, what battlefield would that be for you?
as far as a driving tour or a specific
Sure,
battlefield
a driving
tour.
tour, or maybe a driving tour that has led you to want to study a battlefield more, or one that really became different for you when you've done a driving tour of it.
Well, kind of going off of what we've been talking about, doing that no turning back and getting down to the North Anna River and the North Anna River, and then I'll also add on now Totopotomoy Creek. Like the overland campaign overall is really becoming a very important part of my um, study, and it's just seeing how these are you mainly follow the Union Army when you're following that book. That's because the Confederate Army took a very boring route. They basically went down Route One, and that was about it. So you do straight shot there, but you get a lot more scenery with the Union Army. But it's just like seeing this curvy, wavy route that they took, connecting these roads from Spotsylvania to Bowling Green, to Milford Station, to North Anna, and then just to how they reacted. Like it definitely would be that. And I'm very curious because I have not gotten all the way to Totopotomoy Creek yet. I'm right on the verge of it. But definitely seeing that and seeing how after North Anna, how they start moving, and just seeing how Grant continues trying to move around. And I for me, I have become so much about everything outside of the battle. It's like, okay, I got to North Anna, I see it, I'll get to that eventually. I want to continue this tour. So for me, it's always, I've just kind of like gone into this whole realm of I want to see what's happening before it, I want to see what's happening after it. and I want to know exactly how it's going to progress to getting to Cold Harbor and seeing the spots that they went by in order to get there. So for it's a little hard for me to say that there's a specific battle, but I will say as much as I'm enjoying No Turning Back, the Confederate route from Last Road North towards Gettysburg is absolutely outstanding. I mean, you get Brandy Station, you get Second Winchester, you get Stevenson's Depot. You go past this crossroads that has not just the Confederate Army going past it, you have Custer annoying the rear of Longstreet's column when the Confederates are retreating, going back towards Orange, Virginia after Gettysburg. But you're also at this crossroads of Dangerfield Newby. And for those of you that don't know, he was a black man with John Brown at Harper's Ferry,
I knew
and he
about
was killed.
Dangerfield Newby as a kid. That was something they used to teach us when we were growing up. They would actually interpret that at the
Yeah.
battle. Yeah, I remember learning about that very vividly. That was like, because that's kind of what kind of grossed me out about the Civil War. If you go, just that that could happen to another human being, and that was like my first real like big feeling about it. So, kind of cool
Mm-hmm.
that you touched on that one. That's a raw. That's it's a very tough topic to talk about too, and approach.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you're good. You go right by his house. Actually, it says on it that the driveway that goes up to the house used to be the actual road that your car is on now. Used to be the road, and it's just like you just see these spots, and it's very scenic drive. You go into West Virginia, but at that time, it was actually wait, July 1863. West Virginia was quote unquote
Mm,
official by that point.
yeah, but say in Newby's time, that was still Virginia.
Yeah, newbie's time. But I mean, you get into the Shenandoah Valley. It's beautiful up there. Again, you get Second Winchester. You can get very overwhelmed with Winchester because, like, you go to three spots following the book from Emerging Civil War, and then when you get to like Star Fort, they're talking about 1864, 1862, and 1863. So you got to kind of like make sure you don't get bogged down with all the confusion. I've never made it all the way up to Gettysburg, but it's funny. I've been to Gettysburg so much that I feel like when I complete this tour, I'll be like, okay, I'm at Gettysburg. I'll go to O'Rourke's and get a beer, I guess.
There you go.
It's like
O'Rourke's is a wonderful place.
it's just it's just like, okay, it's Gettysburg. It's like I'm loving everything leading up to it. I know the battle now. I'm not saying I'm a scholar of Gettysburg or anything, but it's like I've been here since I was 10 visiting here. I know a lot. Now, what I would want to do is get in the car, turn around, because the book also has the retreat from Gettysburg. And you can see how Meade's problems while being pressured by Lincoln to do something before Lee escapes into Virginia. And like that's the story that I'm looking forward to is that after Gettysburg story. So for me, it's not about the battlefields with these driving tours. It's all about the stories about them because the battles are the battles, but you really learn a lot about the men and the leaders getting to that point. Because to move that many men from Fredericksburg, Virginia to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, that was a Herculean task. And I will say just one thing about the last road north: if you do follow the Union approach from Fredericksburg to Gettysburg, you start at Chatham Manor and you have a lot more time set aside because you deal a lot with I-95, unfortunately, and you can get caught up in a lot of traffic. It's not going to be very scenic until you get to Western Maryland because you go up towards Manassas, and that's very heavy traffic with DC. So you're going to need a lot more time with the Union approach. We did not get very far with that tour because we just got bogged down in traffic. I was like, okay, I'm done. That's it. So, but yeah, it's hard for me to answer your question because it's more so just seeing what these men are doing before they're shooting at each other.
Right. And that I think that's a very personal thing to be able to do.
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
Well, all right. I think we are pretty good. I think this is a good episode, man. I'm glad we got to talk a little bit
Absolutely.
about driving tours and just kind of what they mean to us, and just a little bit about it.
Yeah, man. And then, if when you post this up on YouTube, if people hear that and they have questions, man, go ahead. Tyler will see it, and maybe I'll see it. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah,
the
I'll
host
send
of
them to
the.
you too. I can
Yeah,
always have you send questions if they come. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, to go ahead, ask questions about that. Again, a lot of what we talked about, Emerging Civil War, they have a website, emergingcivilwar.com. They have blogs on there. You could also find them at savisbeatty.com. We're not trying to like be salesmen here, but of course they're on Amazon, but you know what? Support independent publishing. Try to get them through Savis Beatty. Amazon has a lot of money. Independent publishing and or your Battlefield visitor centers, if they're open, always be safe, please, when you go. And of course, money that you spend at the bookstores there help go towards preservation of the park that you're visiting. So, and you don't, unless Amazon is like the best option for you, try not to do Amazon. Try to buy small.
That's right. I agree. Well, John, thank you again so much for joining me. We'll be back this week. I know me and Mr. Lonnie have an episode tomorrow night, so if you find the free time, let me know. We'll be around. I don't know
What's
the
your
exact.
topic?
We're working on that. We're gonna surprise topic. We're just gonna kind of throw one out there because we tend to be pretty good at it.
Nice,
It was like this
nice,
one. It came
nice.
out of nowhere. I was like, huh, it might not be a bad idea to talk about this. So we'll see what we
Oh, I like
brainstorm.
that.
Him and I are gonna chat a little this evening. So if we figure that out, we'll get there. But
All
yeah,
right. Yeah, sounds good. Mentioned that I got family coming up, which I guess nobody needs to hear about this on the
it's okay.
podcast,
No,
but
no, no. It's
I'll be
totally fine.
around. It may give you a little bit more time to get ready for our big
Mm,
topic that I'm excited about,
yes.
which is another thing that I really think needs a driving tour book written,
Correct. I think that would be a really cool driving tour too.
which is The Forgotten Fall.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
I kind of did it um, on a bus tour, and it was something else. But again, to be able to get out at all these different spots would be something else.
yeah, that's
So, but
something
yeah,
different.
Forgotten Falls coming,
Hmm.
everybody.
I like it. Well, John, thank you again. And guys, if you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. If you're listening on YouTube, thank you for listening. And if you're live with me on Twitch, I appreciate you joining the stream and watching with us. Remember, if you're on the stream or if you want to buy any t-shirts to support the stream and give us some more money to buy books and coffee, which is much appreciated, but never required or never necessary, you can go online down to our Twitch website here. If you look down at the bottom, there's a link to click. It will be having all of our t-shirts, water bottles, hats, hoodies, etc., etc., etc. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Thank you again.
Yeah, have a good night.